Islamic terrorism does not exist. In a recent tweet, President Trump condemned what he called Islamic terrorism. The problem is, there is no such thing as Islamic terrorism, just as there is no such thing as Christian terrorism, Jewish terrorism, Buddhist terrorism, or Hindu terrorism. If we are going to understand the world we live in, a world of many religions, then we must use language that reflects reality. And that means we must distinguish the individual or group that does something from their presumed religious affiliation, as well as from the complex factors that motivated their action. I'm Robert Hunt, and this is another video in the series Muslim Faith and Values. There are Muslims who are terrorists, but this does not mean that their terrorist actions are in any way related to their affiliation with the broader Muslim community or Ummah, nor does it mean that they were inspired primarily or secondarily by the teaching of their religion. As has been pointed out endlessly in the last 3 decades, Islamic law and teaching explicitly forbid acts of terrorism. In the first 3 centuries after Muhammad, Muslim theologians gave considerable thought to the ethical problems presented by war. This is no different than a Christian or a Jewish theologian. All 3 religions have considered war a natural occurrence in human societies, and thus they try to articulate the responsibilities of their religious people when wars arise. Such thinking goes back to the 3rd century in Christian circles and to the beginnings of the Talmud in Jewish circles. So what does that look like? In the case of Islam, Muslim ethicists developed a robust set of rules for conducting wars, and both those rules and the accounts of them are readily available in English. When I took Islamic law, we read War and Peace in the Law of Islam by Kaduri. That's 1955. There are more recent sources. These rules actually deal rather specifically with what we call terrorism, and in at least 3 different ways. First, these Islamic rules of war rule out suicide as a way of achieving military objectives, or at all. Like Christianity, Islam believes that individual humans must fully accept that God alone has the right to determine when they are born and when they will die. No personal or strategic objectives justifies taking one's own life according to Islamic law. Secondly, the Islamic law of war specifically forbids actions that will have inevitable collateral deaths among women, children, the aged, and indeed any non-combatant. That such deaths may occur is recognized, but military actions in which they are inevitable are forbidden. Thirdly, Islamic law specifically forbids and criminalizes all actions intended to incite terror. Actions whose only purpose is to incite fear and dread in individuals or populations, whether for political or military purposes, are explicitly forbidden in Islamic law. Overall, the Islamic laws regulating war and how it ends in peace idealize stability, order, and the preservation of human life and sanity. Indeed, one of the 5 key purposes of all Islamic law is to preserve sanity, the ability to make rational choices. You can't be sane if you're terrorized. So how can there be Muslim terrorists? The same way that terrorism arrives in other religious communities. Anger, frustration, hatred, self-loathing, and a host of other psychological pathologies arise in individuals who then justify their actions by the perversion of religious teaching. And in all religious communities, there arise clever men and women who can play on these pathologies to gain power. And in all religious communities, there are those who share these pathologies and thus enable and excuse terrorist acts. But the fact that a Muslim is a terrorist does not justify calling that person's actions Islamic terrorism. It is just a sick individual manipulated by those who are evil, and enabled by the foolish and the weak-minded that happen to be Muslim. The Muslim terrorist tells us nothing about Islam or his fellow Muslims. And of course, the same thing can be said of the Christian terrorist, the Jewish terrorist, the Hindu terrorist, the Buddhist terrorist, and so on. What we need now, particularly in the U.S. and Europe, is politicians wise enough to measure their words against the truth and to cease denigrating either religions or religious communities for their own political advantage. Thank you.